spoilers right out of the gate. Can you believe you're here?
No, I can't. I'm still scratching my head, number one, but pinching myself to make sure I really am.
How does it compare to, the call when you made it into the Hall of Fame?
Well, I think when you go in the Hall of Fame, you know that is something, that's the penultimate for a player. Yeah. But to be named in the 100 most whatever in the NFL is really special. But I think at the same time, you can make an argument for a lot of guys being on this list, and we'll do that tonight.
Yeah. What was it like when they were revealing the list of wide receivers? You were like, yeah, I saw that guy.
You was like, man, he's great.
Oh, no.
But these guys, I mean, growing up watching this, man, he was a route connoisseur, a route specialist. He finessed you. He caught everything in his radius. And I grew up, I don't want to age you, but I grew up watching you, man, and emulating you with my electric football set. You were my guy, So, and I've met you a couple times, but the sit up here value, I'm like a kid because I'm excited for what you brought to me as a kid in the game.
Oh, well, thank you, Deion. I appreciate that. And you, obviously. I got to watch you a lot. But, you could make the case for a lot of receivers that should be on this list that didn't make the list for whatever reason. So, I think it's great to be named on the 100 best of all time. But knowing that I would say there's a lot of guys that could be on this list.
Was there one moment in particular early in your career that kind of stood out where you said, okay, that was a special play for me? You had over 800 catches in your career.
There was a catch that I made over against the Raiders in the Kingdome, and that when I caught that ball, I went up over Lester Hayes and caught it and came down the end zone with the ball and head and everything hit in the end zone. I think that's when I thought, oh, that's pretty. I mean, not a lot of people can do that.
Man, that's Lester. Y'all don't understand if you understand the magnitude of what he just said.
Yeah.
I grew up on Lester Hayes. He was a dog on the corner. Not only that, the whole Raiders secondary was second to none.
Mike Haynes.
Arguably the best in the game at that point in time. Yeah. And you go up in a home game and over Lester for 6. Man.
How much stickum did you end up with on your hands in Jersey after that one? That's what I want to know.
By that time, it was illegal, but Lester did wear a lot of stickum when he could.
All right, so obviously this is the second to last show, and a lot of people have been griping on Twitter and social media about why'd you pick this guy and why not that person. So why don't we go right to the source, one of the 26th person on the Blue Ribbon panel, our own Judy Batista from NFL Media. All right, Judy, I look at this and I say the wide receivers so far out of the 5 shows we've done, this had to be the toughest group to select, right?
They were all really tough to select. This was extremely difficult to select because, as you guys just were saying there in the studio, a ton of people could have made this list. I spent the most time internally thinking about Terrell Owens. I suspect a lot of fans out there will be wondering why he didn't make the list. He's third in receiving touchdowns, third in career yardage. When he retired, he was second in both of those categories behind Cherry Rice, who was obviously a no-brainer selection. He had that heroic performance in the Super Bowl. He had that great 3-year stretch in the early 2000s. So I thought he would have been a worthy member if he had made it. Honestly, there were just so many other players to get on the list. That's why I think he didn't get on it.
Okay. All right, Judy, hold tight for a second. Are you guys surprised T.O. did not make it?
I want to ask her, why did he make the list?
Okay. Judy?
Why didn't you vote for T.O. if you have all those statistics and he was that guy? I covered this guy, and he was one of the guys that can score from anywhere on the field, and that presented a challenge to me. So why didn't you vote for him on that list?
Well, because I think, as you guys know, the mandate for this was to choose a team that was representative of the whole 100 years of the NFL. So that meant all players. And there simply were not enough slots. That was the case at every position, I think, that we would come up against. There just are not enough slots for as many great players as there were. And as great as Terrell Owens is, and as impressive as his performances were, there simply were not enough spots. Like, I guess I would say this. Who would you take off the list to get him on it?
I could start. I could grab that one. I'm not going to start by saying who you would take off the list, but when you sit up here and declare a man was second in this, he was third in this, you're going with statistics. If you're going to go by identifying statistics, he has to be on the list, unless you're talking about something else. The thing that I love about T.O. is, regardless of what uniform he put on, his game was the same.
Yeah.
His game was the same. There's a lot of people amongst the NFL right now that when they change uniforms, everything it declined.
Is that the way you saw it, Steve?
Yeah, I did too. I really thought Terrell Owens is an exemplary receiver. Now, forget all the stuff that happens off the field and all that stuff. That wasn't what we were voting on.
Right.
We were voting on the best receiver. And in my mind, he has to be one of the best receivers.
Yeah, Judy, in your defense, and all the people on the Blue Ribbon panel, I think, is that when you look at the stats, and we're up here with the guy who led in catches when he retired 30 years ago, okay? You are currently 30th now in catches. Yeah. Okay, so we can't just take the top 10 guys in terms of.
Are you trying to make me cry?
Right.
I'm not. I'm saying what.
Okay.
Maybe happy tears, though. Happy tears.
You're saying that differently. In his time, his stats substantiated who he was.
Right.
In T.O.'s era, his stats substantiated who he was and who he is right now.
But as Judy said, right, Judy, you said you got to take somebody off in order to put somebody on, and it's just too difficult when you're talking about a century.
But we're saying, why would you have to take somebody off and he should already be
10
on?
spots.
But he should already be on. That's what I'm saying.
Judy?
Why do you have to take somebody off and he should already be on?
Judy?
Well, what I would say is this was the challenge at every position is you were comparing players across eras, right? And that's difficult to do, particularly at wide receiver, one of the most difficult because of how the game has changed, how the rules have changed to favor the passing game. So you can't just look at statistics. Yes, he was a dominant receiver, and certainly if you look at his statistics, the fact that he retired behind only Jerry Rice in those categories is impressive, but he was playing in a pass-heavy era, so you had to take that into account when you were comparing him, for instance, to guys like Crazy Legs Hirsch, Don Hudson. That was the challenge at all positions. I think wide receiver was one of the most difficult because of how dramatically the game has changed.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it.
I would just say this. I hear what she's saying, and I acknowledge that that's probably the case. But the truth is, it was what happened to T.O. off the field that is the reason why he's not on this list.
I love you, man.
Yeah. That's the truth.
Because you keep it at 100.
There's no
like
reason
that.
for him not to be on this list with the statistics that he has and the type of team player he was. He should be on the list.
Very, very interesting. Judy Battista, we'll check in with you a little bit later for your opinion on why Larry Fitzgerald became the receiving hero.
That's a number of guys, though, the receiving heroes. Steve Largent is one of them. I grew up in Los Angeles, grew up here in Los Angeles. My grandfather was a football fan, and he loved the Oakland Raiders. And I loved the 49ers. And he always told me, he said, listen, if you want to play football, you got to play this game tough. You ain't going to make it playing it soft. So you got to play it tough. And I always remember that. And my grandfather built in me a lot of things, and he always showed me examples of what my grandpa believed were tough men. And, growing up in Los Angeles, wanting to be a DB, I wore the headband on the neck like Prime. but I realized that corner at a young age. Now, when you 5'7" playing corner, and a running back is coming across on the toss, 6'1", woo, it wasn't financial then, but it was financial. I made a financial decision.
It's a business decision.
And so I did that. But one of the cool things is when I was 8 years old, my grandmother gave me a blanket, a 49ers blanket. And that blanket to this day sits at my house. It's traveled with me everywhere, through college and the NFL. Now when we're at home at the house, we snuggle up in that blanket. That blanket is roughly about 30-something years old.
Wow.
And my kids know whose blanket it is. It's Pop's blanket, but it's our blanket. It's something that we believe in. And being a Carolina Panther, Baltimore Raven, those were my employers. I am a 49ers fan, and I grew up a 49ers fan, and I had that 21 jersey when Prime was there, Jerry Rice jersey, and I also had a J.J. Stokes jersey.
J.J. Stokes.
You're the one. We found him. Hey, Prime. So you went against Jerry.
Yep.
First 5 years of your career.
Oh, yeah, in Atlanta.
And then
Yeah,
you get
we had
to
some
San
battles.
Francisco in '94.
And just the build up to the practice, because I practiced like a dog. Like I practiced like it was a game. I didn't allow it to sit well with you having the luxury of watching film the next day of you going at me and beating me in practice. So everybody was just waiting for this and the anticipation of us going against each other, and we went at it, man. We went at it every day in practice, and it made us better. That year, I was Defensive Player of the Year, and I attribute that to Jerry, Steve Young, and those type of guys. One thing, and Jerry was phenomenal. First of all, Jerry was probably the most in-shape receiver I've ever played against. Because these guys know if you bump and run, man, that's a lot. You got to get off a jam. You got to do this. You got to do this, even to get in your route. And a guy that has a little physicality could wear you down. I couldn't wear Jerry down, man. Jerry could run like a deer all game long. And he was one of the few that I could bump all game that he didn't wear down.
Now, you preceded his career, Steve.
I did. Well,
And-
actually, I played. I think my last year, or next to last year, was Jerry's first year in San Francisco.
Yeah, no, well, so he got there in '85, but what I'm saying is you got on the scene
Okay,
before he did, and then he didn't become Jerry Rice until like year 3.
Yeah.
Like his first few
He was
years, he even
dropping
admitted he
balls.
was dropping
Yeah.
balls.
Yeah.
He was fumbling and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the Jerry Rice. When did you first start hearing about the Jerry Rice we became
Well, when
familiar
he was a
with?
first-round draft choice, we looked at him. We watched him a lot on film and saw he's kind of struggling. But you could just see it was all there, and it was about to explode on the NFL, and that's exactly what happened. But you could see he had all the tools he needed to be a great player. It just took him a little bit of time to get used to being who he was.
One of the cool things with me that when I was playing, one of the things that I noticed, I learned how to run a comeback from Jerry. Watching the film now, I'm old and I'm dated because my hairline is gone.
We could bring you back.
I know.
Bring you back, man.
Anyway,
Bring you back.
and so I remember Ricky Prohl was a teammate, became one of my coaches, and he was always telling me, if you want to learn how to improve, if you want to update your database, because they will get rid of the new customer will always get the new shiny toy. However, if you update your database, they won't throw out the old beat up jalopy. They will just give you more space. And so I learned watching film with him, and I learned when I was pretty fast. However, I learned how to run a comeback. And that started to become, when you're a fast guy, Prime will tell you, playing a wide receiver, a fast guy, their go-to route is what, Prime? A go. Man, I learned how to run a go route, a comeback route, where watching Jerry, how he set people up, using the different alignments. Jerry, the reason why Jerry will never be outdone is because you have to have a standard to be considered the next. And Jerry set that standard. Everybody else next to him are just next. They're coming. But that's the standard. He's the GOAT. He is the standard. And if you try to act like you're going to surpass him, you can't surpass if he's a standard.
Everybody remembers him, obviously, as a Niner and as a Raider. He played in the Super Bowl with them as well. But what about as a Seattle Seahawk? What happened up there?
I remember when I went to Seattle, he walked up to me, he said, I want you to wear number 80. It just blew me away. And you can't say no to a legend. I took a lot of backlash because of that, but he wanted me to wear his jersey, but he was just that type of receiver.
Are we close on that story?
That's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. No, that's not exactly how it happened. But, we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it
Give
at
him
that.
the 25 seconds.
Hey, we got time. Yeah.
Well, the general manager at the time, and I won't say who it was, told me that Jerry wanted to wear my jersey, and if I would let him.
It had been retired.
Yeah. He actually called me first. He said, Jerry wants to wear your jersey, but we're not going to let him unless you say it's okay. And I thought, yeah, I can't say no to Jerry Rice.
Why can't you?
Yes, you can.
Well,
You Steve Largent,
I
man.
could have, but then he goes to
So far back that if he gets off the jam, beats one, and catches the slant, he's out of there. It was no way to defend this guy. And I was playing against Randy with a blown hamstring right here. And you can see I'm 100 yards off. I know they're just going to throw the ball deep. And it's going to be a jump ball. And I couldn't even bend my leg. So then they said, okay, he's going to play off. Let's go up there and make him come up and make the tackle. And Randy was a freak of nature. He had great hands, could run every route, but the deep ball was everything. When he throw that hand up,
It's over.
It's over. And Randy felt like there's no one in the NFL could run with him and play with him. That's the way he thought about the game.
Because no one
And
could.
no one could.
Yeah.
This guy changed the game of football.
So when he broke in, you were in college, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
in
so.
'98.
Yes.
So were you
yeah.
watching and you
Oh,
were like,
98?
He broke in '98. You
Yeah,
came in
I was-
2001, didn't you?
Yeah, I was just graduated high school.
Okay. So you were probably thinking, man, that guy, he is changing the game. As you were
I mean, you see Randy. Even now, when I see Randy, I'm amazed. He's in Charlotte, where I am, and he works out and does all that stuff. He's still working out. He worked out his son. We had an opportunity a couple of years ago to work out with each other. He's a freak of nature. He's remarkable, and his name says it all. When you get mossed,
Yeah.
right? And he used to moss people. He was for a receiver. Jerry, Randy, T.O. There were guys, Steve. There were guys that when you played by yourself in the backyard, you were mimicking their moves. You were mimicking their catches. Not everybody has been that way, but those guys, including yourself, have been those guys. If you want to play wide receiver, those are the guys you mimic.
Steve Largent, what did you admire most about Randy Moss when you
You
saw
know,
him?
I didn't get to know Randy until he was inducted in the Hall of Fame. And I had one impression of Randy, and then I met him, and it just totally blew the impression that I had of him out of the water, because he was the nicest, most humble, hardworking, great guy that I've ever met. He really is just a wonderful human being. And not only that, he's a great football player. And there's no question about that.
You know, I thought one of the more interesting conversations they had when they revealed the wide receivers on the show that preceded us was talking about going across the middle. Give a listen here.
When the ball was in the air, I was so focused on the ball. If I caught the ball, I knew that I could brace myself and take the hit. But the most important thing, it was making that catch for my teammates and to keep the chains moving.
You know, I looked at it throughout the course of my career of that game film on Monday. You know, you know that game film on Monday where that play you're talking about, Coach, is going to separate the men from the boys. And I could always just hear the veterans, you know, like Randall McDaniel, all the older guys of just talking about, oh, you wussy, oh, stay up. So for me, being a wide receiver, of knowing that I was going to take that hit, in the back of my mind, I always thought about that Monday film study of all those men sitting in that room. Either you're going to boo me or you're going to praise me.
Is that the way you saw it, Steve Largent?
Well, you know, what I knew was I was going to get hit whether I caught the ball or not, so you might as well catch it. That was always my philosophy when I played. And I did get hit, but most of the time I caught the ball. And that was at least you know, I could get hurt when I caught the ball, but I caught the ball. And that goes down the stat sheet, so that's a good thing.
Were there certain guys, though, that you had to be leery of out there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, I can, you know, I can think of a lot of guys that you had to watch yourself.
I mean, you played against Ronnie Lott.
Ronnie Lott was
Jack Tatum was in there.
Yeah, Jack Tatum would be one of the guys you need to watch out for. Yeah, there was a lot of guys I played against that could really, you know, put a blow on you.
Well, Steve Smith, why are they hesitant to go across the middle and other guys are willing participants?
Well, you just got to decide how you're going to. I always looked at it as you're going to get the smell of salt either with the ball or without the ball. You have that opportunity in that decision. Now, for me, I always looked at the safety, linebacker, and corner. Now, when when Steve and Deion played, it was a different game. They had guys out there that you can hand fight all the time. So for me, I always believe, it's a fist fight in the phone booth. And so in that fist fight in the phone booth, it ain't a lot of room to move. So you got to hit them before they hit you. That's why I always love getting into it in the run game as well. Because a guy can hit you on the pass play. But when that run play comes on, and I knew, looking at that safety, that run play is going to come. And I'm not going to pass up this opportunity to give it to you the same way you gave it to me. And I loved it. And that's the difference between the game today a little bit, where you can play dead and get a penalty. Back then, play dead if you want to. They're going to roll you out, stop the game and put in another guy.
Most everyone that's on this list at receiver, we knew as defensive backs, these guys are dogs. Mm-hmm. It was none soft about none of these guys mentioned on this list.
And there were a few guys on this list who could have played defensive back as well. Maybe even one guy that's joined us up here on the panel. I don't know. I remember one game when Seattle was taking on Denver, and I believe Mike Harden picked this off. And Steve Largent, take us through the rest.
Well, people ask me all the time if I knew who that was that intercepted that ball.
Collins fumble. And a Collins fumble.
And he recovered it.
Yeah.
He was mad, too, though.
Yeah, I was mad because he had hit me the same way.
See?
In Denver and knocked me out of the game.
Nowadays you'd have been out. You would have got a healthy fine, right?
Well, I didn't hit him with my helmet. I hit him with my shoulder.
Yeah.
So, but I know it's probably.
It's still wrong.
Yeah.
Not with the shoulder. He'd have been okay.
They'll find something wrong. It's blindside. Defenseless runner. He's not a receiver. Defenseless runner.
See, that's why I couldn't play anymore, because I hit a
glad it wasn't that way when I played.
Exactly.
All right, Steve Smith, you are dismissed.
Steve get to go home?
He can get to go home. He gets to watch the rest of the show from behind the cameras. But good job tonight, man.
I'm going to tell you right now, I ain't watching
How much time
nothing
we got?
after I'm leaving.
You stop that right
How much
now.
time
Steve
before
Largent,
break?
Deion Sanders, you
Hey,
get to hang out.
see you later. I'm leaving on air.
Hey, don't go, man.
Stop holding me.
That's all right, because you know what? We're going to give the coaches their due as well.
Deuces.
Don't go, Steve.
There are 10 that made the list. The final 2 announced on Friday. The genius, Bill Walsh, led San Francisco to 3 Super Bowl championships, and the Don of coaching, literally, Don Shula, 347 all-time wins, and we are fortunate enough to be joined by one of his sons, Mike Shula. He is the offensive coordinator of the New York Giants. And so, Mike, congratulations to you and your family. What is going through, I guess, emotionally for you and the rest of your family as your father makes this awesome list?
Yeah, well, it's exciting, and it's exciting for my dad. And, just growing up, one of 5 children and being the youngest, and recognizing how much work he put into it all the time, and the ups and the downs, and now realizing it as a coach, all that you go through. We lived and died with the wins and losses, and we were proud to be Shula, but mainly because of the way he raised us, he and my mom.
Mike, you were literally born into the game of football, so I'm curious, is there one story that you remember from as a kid, just being around the game, that was so special to you?
Well, there's actually a lot of stories. I love the time spent with my father at training camp. Dave got to go through it before I did, but just, the bond that we had. I was his roommate. The stories throughout with all the players, especially when I first started with the guys that were there during those Super Bowl teams. Now, I was really young then. Dave knew those guys better than I did, but just, I think back, because people have asked me in the past, what were some of the things that you can remember of the reasons why those teams were so successful? And I just think that they had really smart players, and they were leaders in their own sense, and they always seemed to be kind of one step ahead of everybody else. But my dad never he communicated very well. If there was any issues ever, he always brought them to the forefront, hit them right in the mouth, and any kind of a problem, and got it handled right then. And I think the players just kind of took that lead and ran with it.
Mike, congratulations to you, your father, and the entire Shula family, and happy holidays.
I don't know if they're active right now. Larry Fitzgerald made it because he has had sustained excellence over a long period of time. You heard them talk about that incredible playoff run in 2008 and his performance then. But he's had 16 seasons of top level production and performance. And let's be honest, he hasn't always had top flight quarterbacking help. So he gets a little bit extra there for that. It's hard to evaluate current players. So when you ask, are there other active players right now? It's really hard to evaluate mid-career players because you want to be able to see the whole career in front of you. I'll tell you, in the meetings, at one point we were talking about, now this voting was done 2 seasons ago, so before the 2018 season. And in one of the meetings we were talking about what a great receiver Antonio Brown was, shoo-in to be a Hall of Famer when he's done. Well, a lot's happened since then. I don't know if you'd say that right now. And you could say that about players at other positions, too. It's very difficult to evaluate active players.
Real quickly, in 15 seconds, were you close to voting for Antonio Brown on this team?
No.
Okay. Just wanted to get that out of you. Thank you. We did have another one of your colleagues, Peter King, who was a member of the Blue Ribbon panel. He joined us in studio last week, and he talked about the formation of the team as well. Give a listen.
In my opinion, there's no running back on this list from the last 15 years in the NFL. In my opinion, that's a mistake. In my opinion, I think it's bad that J.J. Watt is not on this team. J.J. Watt, 3 out of 4 years was Defensive Player of the Year. And the 4th year, he was very close to making it over Luke Kuechly, and Kuechly won it. I mean, that's something that Reggie White didn't do. And so I just look at this and I said, look, I want to honor history. I love football history. I think that if anything I've seen over the first few shows, we might have neglected a few of the modern players for the older players.
Do you agree with Peter?
In part. I think one of the challenges here was definitely that there was not going to be a separate team for the golden era players, that the league wanted this to be one team encompassing all 100 years. So obviously, if you're going to have a team that's representative of that, there are going to be some slots for older players. Having said that, look, we're all fascinated by the players that we watch now, right? We're dazzled by them. But the fact of the matter is it's difficult to judge current players because you can't see how their careers are going to end. In the case of J.J. Watt, agreed, dominant. But at the time that we were voting, he was coming off 2 very, very injury-shortened seasons. So you didn't know what was going to happen after that. You didn't know if his career was going to be over. I would wager that all of us on the panel gave very serious thought to J.J. Watt, but that was a concern. Would he ever play again? I also think, for instance, this underscores how dominant a player like Rob Gronkowski was. We only picked 5 tight ends. He was one of them, and at the time we were voting, we had no idea he was about to retire. So that underscores how difficult it is to judge current players when they're mid-career versus players that we've had lots of time and distance to take a step back from and say, okay, this is where their career stands.
So just when I'm scoring at home, you voted yes for Gronk, no for J.J. Watt? Is that the way I'm interpreting this?
I voted yes for Gronk and no on J.J. Watt.
Okay. I know it's not easy. I'm sure you were honored to be a member of this 26-person Blue Ribbon panel.
Yes.
And it was a tough job. You guys did a great job, but obviously it has created...
First year was my last year.
Yeah. All right. And so how would you try and beat him off the line?
Well, now that I found out that he has a bad back, I think I have a chance.
This was a route technician,
right?
Man. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I get it. It's not easy for either one of you. No. All right. This isn't going to be easy either. All right, Steve, name your top 3 wideouts of all time.
Okay. My number 1 is Jerry Rice. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
My number 2 is Randy Moss. I think that's an easy one, too.
Okay.
But my number 3, Freddie Biletnikoff.
Okay. There you go.
And why is because Fred was a technician. I remember going to a camp where we were both teaching kids how to run routes and stuff. And Fred had a technique where he could run a post route. He'd run 6 steps to an angled right, 3 steps angled left, and then break on a post route. And I'd never heard of anybody counting their steps. Yeah. Have you ever heard anybody doing that?
Nowadays, in the West Coast offense, you count your steps.
Count your steps.
Like a bang 8, it's the 4th outside.
Fred introduced that. to the NFL. And I just was so impressed with that and said, but Fred's a good guy and a hard player and an MVP in the Super Bowl. So,
Super Bowl 11, yep.
So he'd be my third pick.
All right, so 3 pretty good names out there. Let's see if it matched up with the fan vote tonight. Let's see how you did at home compared to the Hall of Famer. Steve Largent. Jerry Rice is going to be at the top of that list. I get it. Randy Moss, and then Larry Fitzgerald, an active player, obviously. Yeah. T.O., who did not make the list. And Calvin Johnson, we haven't even talked about him.
Calvin
Mr.
Johnson was
yards.
considered several years ago one of the best to play the game. It's a guy that's not mentioned, and we didn't mention him all night, by the name of Sterling Sharpe.
From the Packers, yeah.
If he's not on some list, that's a problem because he was straight out phenomenal.
I get it. Yeah. NFL.com all-time team, if you want to.
This dude right here with the president, he's just like, yeah, I just got a hole in one. With President Obama.
Yeah. You hit the hole in one with Barack? It's just another day in the office.
I couldn't celebrate really though.
Why?
Man, he got Secret Service dudes and
I'd have tore Barack's head off.
Oh, no, yeah.
That'd have been my first hole in one. Barack Obama, you would have felt all of that.
No, you
I'd have felt it. My hole in one?
No, he got all the people around, man. No.
Hole in one?
I don't know how many of the other 9 receivers that made the list got a hole in one with the president. Steve Largent might have had a chance.
Randy keeps it 100. I love me some Randy Moss.
Yeah, that's some good stuff. Amazing list that made the team tonight. One guy that did not, Terrell Owens. Our poll question, should he have? Yeah, almost 70%, of course, said yeah. T.O., sorry. Let's talk about another San Francisco receiver. You told us a story about Jerry Rice when he went up to Seattle, number 80, the GM got in the middle, all that sort of stuff. Jerry, rebuttal time.
Well, I'm sitting here watching the NFL 100 all-time team and just found out Steve Largent got played, I got played. I had no intent on wearing his jersey when I went to Seattle. He's a legend, and I would never cross that line. So sorry about that. I guess we got played by management, but have so much respect for you and on the football field and off the football field, Steve Largent, you were the man.
Jerry looks really comfortable in there. He does. Jerry, you look real comfortable in there, man. You living good, man.
Somebody could corroborate your story, so there we go.
Yeah, that's right. Jerry's been a friend for a long time, and he's a great guy and a great player, obviously, and I have a lot of respect for him.
Steve Largent, congratulations on making the squad.
Thank
Hope you had fun over the last hour. Did you ever get a hole in one playing with the president, like Larry
Fitzgerald?
Not
playing with I've had a hole in one, but I'm not playing with the president.
Okay, well, I figure in 8 years in Congress, you might have had a shot at it. You never know. Prime, as always, congratulations on making the team as well. We'll see you hanging around NFL Network. Coming up next week, we reveal the 10 quarterbacks on the NFL